The ultimate refuge of life. I was born and grew up in a land nurtured by Buddhism. Like me, most people there are devoted Buddhists. The material comfort and pleasure of this and future lives are not what we seek. Life is rugged, and Buddhist faith does not help improve our material well-being. Nor does it make us feel spiritually superior or better protected, as all sentient beings are equally endowed with Buddha nature. What is in Buddhism that makes us content and peaceful, even though we are impoverished and lead a wandering life? It is the Buddha's teachings on impermanence and causality that give us great courage and hope. Even the most destitute and illiterate Tibetans have a deep conviction in the karmic law of cause and effect, and are able to face changes in life without fear. Essentially, the various emotional afflictions and struggles in our times are about fear of impermanence. And to escape this, people busy themselves with endless activities. Interestingly, some people live an unsettled life despite living in large mansions, while others live at ease despite being homeless. Our aversion to impermanence is largely due to our misapprehension of life and the world around us. First, people perceive impermanence as being a kind of experience that can be eluded strategically. Anxious to ensure a steady life, we attempt to avoid change, unaware that by doing so we evade life itself. Life is change. If we pay a little more attention, it is not hard for us to see the pervasiveness of change. The shifts of the physical universe, seasons, people, our bodies, emotions, and thoughts are all part of this immense flux. Impermanence is not a short-lived transition. Rather, it is the bare face of our entire life. Willingly or unwillingly, we have to keep it as our lifetime companion. Secondly, people perceive impermanence as the cause of frustration and agony. If things remained constant, suffering could be avoided. But in reality, impermanence is neither good nor bad. It acts like a pendulum that can swing in either direction between gain and loss, but only for so long. Being happy or miserable is very much contingent on our perspective and mental attitude, not so much on impermanence itself. To a large extent, impermanence only shatters our delusion about security and certainty. A resolute belief may change. A loved one may leave. A healthy body may get sick. And a prosperous business may go bankrupt. When we face an imminent fall, we instinctively want to grasp at something. This is how grasping emerges. However, since what we want to grasp is intrinsically impermanent and consequently unreliable, our suffering ensues. It is our own grasping rather than impermanence that produces our suffering. To evade impermanence is thus both futile and unnecessary. Acknowledging and accepting impermanence may not be easy at the beginning, because for a long time we have been working hard to avert it. Impermanence is like the Phantom of the Opera, ugly by appearance, but gentle within. Its face will always terrify us if we remain distant from it. But once we get close to it and understand it, we can easily befriend it. People tend to ignore impermanence when life goes well, although improvement is also a display of impermanence. It is not until things turn sour that we suddenly notice it. In this seemingly harsh way, life is trying to remind us of our blindness to the illusory nature of security, and to the ever-changing nature of all phenomena. If we continue neglecting spiritual practice, our brief existence will be squandered on meaningless pursuits and anxieties. My own first encounter with death was at around the age of 7. One day, my grandmother suddenly fell ill, and the family was sobbing at her bedside. I loved my grandmother dearly and wanted to do something for her. So I sneaked out every evening to a ruined Mani mound outside the village, a mound of stones with the markings of the 6-syllable mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, the heart mantra of the Bodhisattva of Compassion, Avalokiteshvara. I prostrated around the Mani mound while at the same time chanting the 6-syllable mantra. Dedicating the merit of what I did to my grandmother, I hoped that she would survive. Yet she died. Following local custom, my family placed my grandmother's corpse on the back of a yak and took it to a nearby sky burial ground where a sky burial ceremony was performed for her. I did not join the final farewell. Instead, I went to the same Mani mound and chanted the mantra again. From there, I could see the sky burial ground on the other side of the river. In the distance, vultures gathered aloft, more and more, circling in the hard, steely sky. A deep sense of sorrow came over me. Instead of crying, I continued chanting and prostrating, wishing that this modest merit might benefit my grandmother's rebirth. My grandmother's death instilled in me a profound sense of life's impermanence and sadness. It also made me appreciate the value of Buddhism and spiritual practice. Impermanence is every practitioner's intimate friend, for it constantly reminds him to stay alert while furnishing encouragement and hope. Impermanence also reveals the possibility that everything can change. However serious the mistake we may have made in the past, and however ignorant we are now, we can purify our past negative karma and gradually dispel our delusion. Some people approach impermanence the other way around. Since all is impermanent and will disappear eventually, they think that we can do whatever we want without concern for consequences. They also think that it is senseless for us to pursue anything, as we can take nothing with us in the end. In order for us not to get lost in impermanence, the Buddha compassionately expounded another truth behind all phenomena, the karmic law of cause and effect. To have confidence in cause and effect is not tantamount to believing in fate. Otherwise, we would not practice diligently and repent our negative actions, nor would we now seek complete enlightenment. Since all things are subject to constant change, there is no such thing as predestined fate. Each and every action will result in consequences, influencing our lives and others as well. Wild grass sprouts and grows quickly, while it takes a year for barley to flower and crop. Likewise, some effects of our actions will become immediate, while others will take much longer to ripen. Ubiquitous, profound, and intricate, the law of cause and effect governs every phenomenon. The Buddha says that the entire causal chain behind a single phenomenon can only be discerned by beings who have attained complete enlightenment. What we normally see is just a small part of it. If we understand that whatever we do will affect others and ourselves, we will naturally become responsible and no longer think and act myopically and recklessly. We will also develop further insights into the interdependence between people, as well as between people and the world. And the need to cultivate compassion becomes evident too. If we hope to ultimately eliminate suffering, we should not harm others. If we want to be happy, we should create conditions to make others happy. How the karmic law of cause and effect works is often interpreted as justice. Personally, I am not fond of the word justice. It evokes punishment and sounds cold and distant. We do not believe that someone or something is out there praising or protecting us if we do the right things, and punishing us if we do the wrong things. Instead, we are always our own master. The difficulties and pains we experience are simply the effects of our past deeds. If our attitude is positive, what we suffer will not only cancel out a past cause and effect, but will also create a virtuous cause leading to positive results. Therefore, suffering is not necessarily bad, since every experience in life can be an opportunity for enlightenment. The key lies in our own mental attitude when facing it. The reason that we place great emphasis on mental attitude is that the true consequence of an action is largely determined by the motivation behind it. In Tibet, where the pursuit of spiritual liberation is the center of life, even a slight action is motivated by a wish to benefit all beings. Because of this vast attitude, even if one just places a small mani stone on top of a mani mound, one sows a seed of future liberation. If our attitude is vast enough to take into account the happiness of all sentient beings, regardless of what we do, we will be able to withstand hardships and difficulties patiently. In light of the law of cause and effect, if the effect of a past action is yet to ripen, and you have not taken any measures to counteract it, it will surely ripen in your next life or in those to follow. Death only marks the end of this life. The unexhausted causes and effects will be carried forward to the next life, which, while bearing the old fruits, will simultaneously create new causes and effects. These are like waves, one after another without end, pushing life's endless cycle where the past, present, and future are connected by an unbroken causal chain rather than a soul. Despite the stark independence of the present life from future lives in terms of their physical and mental manifestations, the present life forms the basis of future ones. Since karmic effects vary in their attributes and potencies, the resultant rebirths vary accordingly. This is how samsara's 6 realms came into being. The particular realm in which one takes rebirth depends entirely on the karmic effects one is bound to experience. As Guru Padmasambhava says, if you want to know your past life, look at what you are now. If you want to know your future life, look at what you do now. Today, the subject of death has become taboo, and many people avoid talking about it. And discussion about cyclic existence gets avoided as well. Whenever I mention cyclic existence, someone will challenge me by saying, "How am I going to believe in reincarnation if I have never witnessed it?" Or, "If I've already experienced reincarnation, why don't I remember it?" In fact, we do not always have to believe by seeing. For instance, we never doubt that we have ancestors several generations ago, despite the fact that we have never met them. We have been told by scientists about millions of galaxies in the universe similar to the Milky Way, to which our solar system belongs. Some are so far away that even the most advanced astronomical telescopes fail to spot them. Still, we believe in their existence. It is not necessary to be perplexed by our lack of memory about past lives. We can easily forget things that happened years, months, or days ago, or even what we have just done or said. So it should not be surprising that you cannot remember your past lives. When you say, "I don't believe in cyclic existence," perhaps you actually mean, "I don't want to believe in cyclic existence." Perhaps the idea of it seems too far-fetched for you to grasp, or you do not have the courage and curiosity to consider it a possibility. You also probably regard cyclic existence and death as being too distant from your daily life to spend much time thinking about them. Preoccupied with living, you have no time to think about the afterlife. But look at those around you. Many of them died unexpectedly. You cannot be sure that you will be luckier. We Tibetans have a saying, "Tomorrow or the next life, we never know which might come earlier." Some people equate the idea of reincarnation with superstition, rejecting it as irrational. Yet if we deny the reality of the law of cause and effect, we become lost in the face of impermanence. Family, career, and friendship will all leave us in the end. Ambition, ideology, and belief cannot stand up to time's scrutiny either. I am not suggesting that these things are of no value, but our sense of being goes far beyond them. Modern life is filled with theoretical hypotheses, and I often wonder why people resist the idea of reincarnation. In a sense, it is no more preposterous than assuming the reality of tomorrow or next year. We are often very concerned with planning for our future. So why then do we not grant ourselves the chance to prepare for death and beyond? If there is indeed a next life, Is it not something important for us to plan for? Admittedly, our value system is an individual choice, and it is unwise to blindly follow others. However, being narrow-minded and dogmatic does not serve us well either. For those cynical about cyclic existence, I think a more pragmatic approach is to acknowledge their lack of understanding in this subject and take the chance to learn about it. Many Tibetans place great emphasis on spiritual development. This is thanks to our deep conviction in impermanence and the karmic law of cause and effect. It is natural for us to take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Had Shakyamuni not attained complete enlightenment through his own efforts, and had he not compassionately shared with us this uncontrived wisdom, we would probably have remained blind in our quest, not knowing where we came from, who we are, and where we are going. For people who have not benefited from his teachings, some may think that they cannot do much about life even if they lead a meaningless one. I would have been one of those people if not for my exposure to the Buddha's teaching transmitted by his followers over generations. Because of this, my heart is filled with gratitude for the three jewels. After the Buddha attained enlightenment, he discovered that all sentient beings possess a perfectly luminous, innate mind that can be awakened. This is indeed inspiring, for we would otherwise be ignorant of this innate goodness in us, given our presently deluded state. The Buddha not only points out that all beings can achieve enlightenment, but also patiently teaches us how to remove delusion. He inspires us and encourages us, shares his teachings, and tells us how to verify them through practice and realization. He reveals the truth of life through different means tailored to individual mental qualities and habits. The longer we drift in the ocean of samsara, the worse our delusion becomes. Even the Buddha himself said that among his countless past lives, he had been a white dog over many lifetimes. If the bones of all these dogs were piled up, it would be higher than Mount Sumeru, the central mountain in Buddhist cosmology. We are far more mired in the depths of samsara than the Buddha was before his enlightenment. If we desire change, we must rely on effective means. The process leading us to enlightenment is like a map that guides us through a maze. Without the guidance of the Dharma, we become perpetually trapped. Some followers of the Buddha are also said to be the embodiments of the Buddha. They come to us, train us, and fight with us. They ensure that we never lose perspective, even at our darkest and most uncertain moments. It is through them that we see the possibility of our own enlightenment. The individual kingdoms of India during the time of the Buddha had many spiritual practitioners. It is said that while some of these practitioners had accomplished high levels of meditative concentration, only the Buddha had attained perfect and complete enlightenment and had seen the true face of all phenomena. Many then, after seeking advice from the Buddha, came to see the defects in their previous practices. In order to achieve what the Buddha had accomplished, they decided to abandon their old ways and follow him. With reverence, they expressed this unequivocal resolution in the Buddha's presence. Subsequently, thousands of practitioners expressed the same resolution in front of either the Buddha or his followers. The transmission of resolution from one person to another has since produced the Buddhist lineage. When you have decided to open your mind and travel on the Buddhist path without bias, you must solemnly express your resolution through both body and speech in the presence of a member of the Sangha. It is not just a symbolic ceremony, but has profound significance. Since Buddhist practices encompass the three aspects of one's body, speech, and mind, taking refuge with all these three aspects present sows an ideal seed of realization. Meanwhile, by taking refuge with a qualified teacher, your resolution will become part of the resolution of millions of practitioners of the past, present, and future. In this continuum of resolution that goes back to the Buddha, your resolution no longer stands alone. Just imagine how powerful this mental leverage can be. After you have taken refuge in the three jewels, you will also receive the refuge vow. Among the three aspects mentioned, the mind is the primary driver. Actual refuge will only occur if you have genuine devotion to the jewel of the Buddha as the actual refuge that shows you the path and teaches you, a deep conviction in the jewel of the Dharma as the actual refuge that guides you to realize your own Buddha nature, and high respect for the jewel of the Sangha as the actual refuge that accompanies you and protects you on the spiritual path. In my childhood, Buddhist images, statues, scriptures, and monastic members were hardly seen. Yet people's faith in the three jewels never wavered. Many children, including myself, also knew at an early age how to pray to the three jewels. But many years later, I found out that not everyone knew how to pray, and that many of them did not have the courage to admit their need for help. I myself liked to chant mantras, but the prayer beads were impossible to get at the time. In order to make them, I often climbed up the nearby hillsides together with other kids in the village to collect seeds from cypress trees. Then we made beads out of them. The seeds were extremely hard, and it was difficult to pierce them with a needle. Still, I always enjoyed doing it. Sitting cosily in the bush, I often started my day mending my ragged clothes, after which I made prayer beads. Slowly, the day went by in such simple delight. I also learned how to chant sutras and prayers from the village elderly. The way they taught me could indeed be called oral transmission. They were illiterate. So was I at the time. They recited the texts which they themselves heard from others, sentence by sentence to me. I recited after them and memorized all the texts. However, some, like the Sutra of Tara and the Wishing Prayer of Dewachen, turned out to be chanted inaccurately by the elderly. It nonetheless made such an imprint on my mind that I sometimes still make mistakes while chanting those texts. Throughout my life, Buddhism has brought me immense peace and joy. Nonetheless, taking refuge does not guarantee a life free of worry and hassle, nor does it mean that somebody will come to solve our problems when needed. I actually think that being a Buddhist entails tremendous courage. Buddhism does not promise us security and certainty. Actually, it shatters our illusion of security. Taking refuge means that we are finally determined to face up to any circumstances in life. Instead of seeking comfort or consolation and looking for other ways out, we are to live in the present. In Tibetan, Buddhists are called inner seekers, those who turn their minds inward in search of absolute truth. The cultures of our modern era are generally characterized by pompousness, flamboyance, and unsettledness. Words like reflection and introspection can sound both alien and dull. However, Buddhist practice is essentially mindfulness, which amounts to a heightened awareness of ourselves and our environment. We all tend to be enthusiastic about something new, and Buddhist practice is no exception. After having received brief advice, we may be full of expectations. We start a routine revolving around meditation, mantra recitation, and orderly eating and sleeping. By doing so, we believe that life is finally put on the right track, and that we are making progress. Sometimes we even feel that enlightenment itself appears to be within reach. But soon disappointment sets in. Life does not become more predictable. Neither do we realize the progress we aspired to quickly enough. Mind training forces us to constantly confront our true selves, and we find ourselves repeatedly and powerlessly returning to old patterns of behavior. Is this so-called Buddhist practice? Indeed, Buddhist practice is not a dazzling magic show that excites and amazes us all along, nor is it a shield against daily hassles. It may even be more tedious than the daily trivia we try to evade. The practice is not supposed to enhance our lives or adorn our egos. If this were the case, the Buddha, when he was Prince Siddhartha Gautama, would not have abdicated his throne to become a self-ordained monk. He was raised in the royal palaces built by his father, where he was shielded against all sufferings. One day he slipped out of the palace and saw the sick, the old, and the dead, the real faces of human life. Realizing that suffering eventually would not spare him either, he decided to abandon his life at the palace. Thus, our practice is about unchaining ourselves from self-deception. Once we start the practice, we become aware how little we know about what we do, how we feel, and what we think. Habits conditioned over many lifetimes discourage us from simply being with ourselves. To be vigilant and mindful is thus rather challenging. It entails that we remain open to all situations without impulsive judgment, desire, and aversion. This makes us seemingly powerless. Yet mindfulness does not stop there. We must consciously observe how we try to look for alternatives, but to no avail. Frankly speaking, this is not very pleasant for beginners. Previously, we could always resort to anxiety, harsh words, anger, self-criticism, and so on. We could always shout and yell, be overwhelmed by negative emotions, and refuse to see reality calmly. But with mindfulness, we realize that such actions and emotions can no longer be our resort. It's a long-established tradition that spiritual practitioners must cultivate forbearance. In the context of Buddhist practice, it refers to mental openness and resilience that prevent one from reacting on impulse and being led by negative emotions. Not looking for immediate remedies, evasion, or solace, a practitioner tries to take a pause, to observe, and to directly experience each moment, and thereby see the truth of the matter. Persistent mind training enables us to gradually acquire such openness. The hope and fear that often devour us are two sides of a coin. Fear comes with hope, evoking the desire to evade what is undesirable, which in turn fuels fear. Therefore, neither expecting nor resisting allows our mind to rest at ease. Only then can we possibly catch a glimpse of what really is behind the illusory facade of actions and thoughts that makes us laugh or cry. In order to avoid loneliness, people like to keep themselves busy. To turn our minds to Buddha Dharma, we need to be our own companions. On the path to enlightenment, we will surely fall prey to old propensities again and again. Nevertheless, we must keep practicing, never give up, and be courageous. We should always be grateful for the three jewels. Without their encouragement and inspiration, our strength and perseverance would wane. Taking refuge, therefore, is not just the beginning of the path, it is the entire path of spiritual liberation.